right, good morning, everybody. So today we're going to be talking about emphasis. So emphasis is the significance or importance given to part of an artwork. So you can create emphasis in a variety of different ways. Usually it uses contrast in some way. But one of the main ones for creating emphasis, causing something to stand out, is scale. So that just means how big or small something is. So for example, making something an unusual size. So in this picture here, the artist decided to make an eyeball very realistically, except for the scale or size of it is significantly different. So you can see that this giant eyeball compared to this tree, this eyeball is like, over 50 feet tall. So that is changing the scale. So in our worksheet here, we're going to be looking at scale is either something big surrounded by smaller things or something small surrounded by bigger things. So I'm going to go for that first one. So if I have something big surrounded by smaller things, so if I have a big shape here and then I add on a bunch of smaller things around the outside, what ends up being emphasized, right? It ends up being the triangle. The triangle shows and stands out the most because since there's so many little small things around the outside, it ends up just kind of making it look like a background, right? And then this triangle stands out because of the size. So another thing that you can look at for the contrast is a contrast in color. So there's, for contrast in color, if you use complementary colors, that'll make each other stand out or can emphasize each other. So in this case here, it's using complementary colors. So this bright yellow lemon is laying on top of this light purple fir. And because yellow and purple are complementary colors, that makes this lemon really stand out, and this lemon is emphasized. Now you can do that with neutral and black compared to a color as well. So you can have a neutral or black and white background with one area of color. That's what I'm going to do over here in a minute. And then a colorful background with one area of neutral colors or black and white. So you can kind of do it either way. So there's multiple ways you can do this. You can have complementary colors that fill this area, or like I'm going to do, you can have a neutral. So remember, neutral is grays, browns, colors that aren't on the color wheel. Or you can have a black and white background with one area of color. So if I decide I want to do, I'm going to start with my area of color. So I'm going to use red for this, and I'm just going to do a red dot right here. Now it is already slightly emphasized just because it's the only thing on here, but that's not our goal for this part. Our goal is to show when you have a neutral background or something in the background. So if I add on black and white stripes and I have that red dot is really going to be emphasized because it's the only area of color in a neutral background, right? And there's lots of different things where you can have, emphasis can be created by having something really busy next to something that's not busy. But you're going to come up with your own ideas for these ones over here, okay? Don't just copy mine. You got to come up with your own ideas to fill these as an example based on the things over here. But come up with your own ideas, all right? So this last one, the contrast in density. So that means how loose or tight a design is. So you can have a large area with a tightly packed patterns next to an area of blank or loosely packed area. And you can have the reverse as well. So like this one right here, this area right here is emphasized. That means you notice it first, right? Because this area has tons of stuff in it and this area doesn't. And because this area doesn't have a lot of stuff in it and this area does, it's emphasized. Now in this section, I'm gonna kind of do the opposite. I wanna create an area that is densely or, you know, has lots of stuff in it. And then I'm gonna have it surrounded by a looser pack of stuff. So for me, I'm gonna do dots again. And I'm gonna have a densely packed area, so that means lots of dots really close together. Sorry if the camera's shaking a little bit. So I'm gonna have one area where it's really, really dense, and then I'm gonna have the rest of the areas where it is not as dense. And you can always do this and then look at it and decide whether you need to have more or less. You know, because you really want to make sure our goal here is to have one area stand out, right? Okay, so I could continue kind of like, you know, adding these things in, and I could spread them out more or less, so I can make it look really dense in here and then not quite as dense as I'm moving outward. So it goes from, you know, really dense to slightly dense, creating a gradient. That would be a good thing. But you're gonna come up with your own idea because you wanna be able to know a few different ways to emphasize different parts of your artwork. All right, so here is my example. So you can see right now, this area right here, that didn't take me too long, but that area right there really stands out because there's a lot of stuff right there, and then the outside doesn't have quite as much stuff in there. So it's kind of the opposite, right? All right, thanks everybody.